Hey everyone, Daniel here with Slow Haste, where we talk about synths, electronic music, and creative applications and electronic music production. Today, I wanted to bring it back to basics, and we are going to be looking at the Elektron Digitakt, one of my most used hardware devices, and I'm just going to give you all a crash course, a tutorial, a rundown on the real basics of step sequencing or punching in a pattern on the Digitakt, starting with project creation. So let's hop right into it. In order to create a new project, you're going to want to hit this gear. This is the settings button. And when you have project highlighted, you can navigate the menus with the arrow buttons, but you want to hit yes, and then you want to hit load project. If you go to the bottom with the arrows, you'll see create new, hit yes, and then it's going to ask if you want to save the most recent project before loading. I'm going to hit yes just in case I changed some parameters because I liked the project I had going on. Okay, now that we have our project loaded, we're going to be on this screen. In order to get back to these pages, what you can do, basically, if you're in any of these menus, if you just hit no, it brings you back to whatever page you have highlighted here. So I want, I'm in tempo, I just want to hit no. I can go back to my source page, which I had highlighted. This works with any of these 5 pages. So if you were in your amp and you go into your settings, just hit no, and it brings you back to the amp page. It's helpful to think of this little section, this rectangle, as the page and navigation knobs within those pages for editing your sounds. We'll get to that later. So every default project on the Digitakt will have these stock samples. And they are what they say they are. There's kick, snare, tom, clap, cowbell, closed hat, open hat, and a cymbal. And you don't need to keep those sounds on those numbers necessarily, but it helps to be consistent with whatever you decide to do personally. So I always keep my kick on 1. And I'm going to show you how to punch in a pattern. There are multiple ways to do this, and you can do it by punching it into the sequence, in which case you would hit the record button, and you are given a grid. And you can punch individual notes into that grid. And you can see when the sequence is playing, there you have your sequence. If you hit the record button again, when you're in the step sequence mode, it will exit that and it will just continue playing. If you want to get a metronome going, you can use the function button and hit pattern to access this page. And each menu item corresponds with a knob. So if you turn that, corresponds with E, turns the metronome on. And again, hit no to exit. Another quick way to turn the metronome on and off is to hold function and pattern at the same time. Hit function, hold pattern. Okay, so we have a kick pattern, which is kind of cool. Let's add in a closed hat. Something like that. I'm going to show you another way to record, and that is by holding record and hitting play. You'll see it says live record unquantized. Live record means that the sequence is playing, you're hearing what's being played, and whatever you play on top of that will be recorded in. So let's go. So you can hear this is not perfectly timed. I did want that little accent, that syncopated rhythm at the end, but the individual hits are not perfectly in time. So if you hold function and hit the trig button, you'll see the alternate function is quantize. And you can use the E knob to change the quantization. Sounds a lot more clean now, right? Let's turn our metronome off. Metronome is off. And you can change the amount of quantization. But I kind of like to just do it fully quantized. So again, once you hit a trig, once you hit one of the numbers 1 through 8, that's the sample that you're going to be recording when you're in the live record mode. So let's do that again with a clap sound. And again, I'm just showing you very basic principles, and after we go through this, I can show you how to load in some samples to perhaps get a more interesting and unique sound. Rather than the complete stock sounds that come loaded onto every pattern. Let's go to the step sequencer again and punch it in while we're recording, because we can do that too. There you go. And when you enter in the step sequencer, you're automatically quantizing everything to that trig. So you can't play off the grid while you're entering in the step sequencer. However, within the step sequencer, if you want to edit a note that you've played individually, you can hold that button and then adjust any of these parameters. And say you want to adjust the timing. If you want to enter something via the step sequencer, but you don't want it to be totally quantized, if you press the left or right arrow, it brings up this micro timing menu, and see the default state says on grid, and you can move it to the right and you can move it to the left. So let's see what that sounds like. Not great. And that practically puts it on step 12. Basically, this is a good tool if you want to add a human element or a little bit of a shuffle that isn't exactly on the grid of a typical swing. So now that we've added some elements, I'm going to show you how to save the project. So you're going to hold the function, hit the gear, and then you can save your project. And these are all the projects I've had built up. And I'm going to go to the first empty slot and hit yes. Hit function and clear to clear the name. And then if you hold function, you can scroll around and pick a name. So let's just name it tutorial, and then hit yes to save. All of these options will show you what the different buttons, you can edit, you can delete, insert, blah, blah, blah. Yes is save. So we'll hit yes, and it's saving tutorial. If you then go into your project, you can load project and see tutorial is in slot 10 where we just saved it. Again, hitting no to return to the main menu, or whatever page we were on prior to entering that menu. Okay, so let's add in another hi-hat element. Let's do our open hat, but let's take the volume down, make it a more subtle element, because I want to have it on every trig. So another trick again. There you go, now it's on every single trig. Now I'm going to show you some of the options you have within these pages to kind of spice up your sound a little bit. So we have this hi-hat. We're just going to pan it a little bit. We're going to pan the open hi-hat to the right and pan the closed hi-hat to the left. Just pretend we're sitting behind a drum kit. And again, to edit the sound, just press the trig or press the sample that you want to edit. And then you turn the knobs that correspond to these items. So G is going to be your panning. So you can already see that sounds a little bit more exciting. Another thing I like to do to spice it up is to change the attack time of the envelope. Again, still in our amp page. And we're going to do this with our open hi-hat. And I'm going to solo it. I'll solo that sound so you can hear it. And how we do this is if you hold function, since these are highlighted, it indicates that we can hear the sound. And you can see they light up when a step is active. So we want to mute everything except for this hi-hat. And we're going to record, live record, unquantized, again, hold record and press play. And we can actually record automation from any of these parameters. So I'm going to automate the attack time. Just kind of randomly. Now that's recorded into our sequence. And if we have this selected, this is a bad example because all of the steps are full. But if there were any empty steps and you record in automation, when there is an automation change, the respective trigger will appear yellow. It's just something to be aware of. So again, let's bring our other elements back in, hold function, and hit our samples. So what we did is kind of made our open hi-hat sound a little bit shakery. And I'm going to play with that sound some more by turning the pitch up. And you know what? For the fun of it, let's automate some pitch. Okay, so now let's add in another element. Let's go with a snare sound, but first I want to play with the filter and adjust the filter for this sound. So let's change from low pass, which is the default, to a high pass. And you can hear this is a very extreme setting. So let's play around a bit. And let's punch in some steps, and then we're going to edit these steps individually because I don't like those all being the same. It sounds very dry, right? So what we can do is, again, hold the trig to edit it and open up that filter a little bit more progressively with each hit. And let's also change the pitch of those samples. So the filter's opening and the pitch is going down. See how that sounds. Okay, so it's still a little bit, abrasive. It doesn't sound natural. So let's edit those further by playing with the amp envelope. So again, hold that, decrease the hold and the decay. Another trick is that while you're holding any trig that's active in the step sequencer, if you hold it and press yes, you'll sample that sound. So I like that. I like that deadened sound. And I'm going to pitch this down even more. And then we're just going to turn the level down on that track a little bit and pan it. Also, what I'm going to do is take this step, pan it to the other side so it bounces around a little bit. And then save. Always save regularly. Okay, so admittedly, this isn't the most interesting of patterns, but I'm hoping that it's giving you an idea of how to program things on the Digitakt. The next thing I want to show you how to do is to make the pattern longer. So we're going to hold function and hit the page button. If you want to extend the pattern to be twice as long, hit page. So you'll see that this is now highlighted, the 2 out of 4. The default is 1, and the most you can do is 4 out of 4, or 64 steps. But let's stick with 32 steps for now. To exit this menu, you hold function and hit page. Also, a cool trick is if you just hit that, you'll see the length goes to however many steps you have highlighted. So you can make some very non-traditionally timed rhythms and whatnot. Just do a little bit of quick math, figure out how many steps are in your time signature, and you're good to go. Anyways, exit, hold function, hit page. Since we already have a pattern, when we duplicate the pages, it copies that pattern. So you can see we are at the snare. So you can see it playing, and here the pattern comes to page 2, and the page you have highlighted will appear brighter, and the page that's playing will be flashing. So now that we have 2 phrases, let's change things up a little bit in the second phrase. I like these 2 trigs, but I want to remove them. But first, I'm going to copy. You do that by holding the active trig, hitting the copy button. And then if you want to paste it, hold where you want to paste it, and hit the paste button. I'm going to do the same thing with the second trig. So now I have these 2 copied to there and there, respectively. And we're going to hear what that sounds like. Okay, look at that. Let's futz around with some other elements too. Let's go to the kick track. So again, this is copied. I'm gonna change up the rhythm kind of randomly and hear what that sounds like. All right, so that turned out pretty cool. We got some syncopation going on, right? And what we can do to make these syncopated notes a little more subtle is we can just decrease the amp envelope. And hear what that sounds like. Hear what that does? It kind of gives it some rhythmic variance, so not everything is boom, 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 boom the whole way through. And likewise, let's play around with our closed hat pattern. Let's give ourselves, again, a bit of a more syncopated rhythm. Whoops, I accidentally edited the first page instead of the second page, as you can see. So let's keep it. You know what? Let's keep it because mistakes can be fun. And I like to roll with them sometimes. What I'm going to do, because of that mistake though, and it's very kind of like a heavy-handed rhythm during that first pattern, is I'm going to automate the attack time to decrease that subtlety and then have it more straightforward in the second phrase. So as you can see, I mentioned these will glow yellow when there's automation. And save. Okay, so I need a little bit of melody here. I'm gonna use sample 8 to bring a melodic element in. And I'm gonna show you how to do that. What you're gonna wanna do is navigate to the source page and then scroll knob D till you get to an empty slot. And then you're gonna hit yes on that empty slot and you'll be brought to your samples page. And you're gonna wanna go into your factory samples by hitting yes. And let's go to synths. And let's find some analog notes and see what we have. To sample the sounds, hold function and hit yes. And we want to play around. Let's take this one. When you hit yes, it assigns it to that slot in the source page. And to view that, we go back here, and you can navigate by scrolling or using the arrows. So there's our sample. I already know that I want to hold it out for a little bit longer. So let's do that by increasing the reverb and looping the sample. So we want to change the play mode by turning knob B in the source page. And we want to have it forward looping. And now you can hear if I hold it, the sample loops. If you hit the source page, it goes to this waveform view. And it's playing over and over because I just had the whole time at infinite. Anyways, we're going to want to find a point in the sample by turning this loop knob that adjusts the loop position. And we're going to want to decrease the end. And I'm going to turn the delay up too, because I really want this to kind of be a burst of sound. Yep. Okay, cool. Next, I'm gonna expand our pages to have 4 phrases. And as you can see, because I put one on the downbeat of phrase 1, it will duplicate that and show up on the downbeat of phrase 3 because it extended our pattern by 2. I want to keep that note there, but I want to change it. So if we hit function and track, it will bring us into chromatic mode. So let's live record on quantized and record in this note. And what I also want to do to this note is have the loop go backwards. If you notice, when I hit play, for some reason, I'm going to exit chromatic mode. When I hit play, for some reason, this first trig is not seeming to play. And if we go into our step sequencer and look at this, there is indeed a note on this trig. However, if you recall, we did not quantize this pattern. And you can see that the micro timing scale has it being the slightest bit off of the grid. So it's technically playing at the end of the pattern because it's before the downbeat. So that might happen, in which case you can go in and adjust. But that will only happen if you're playing live, not if you actually punch it into the step sequencer. And now you're here that our note is there. Okay, so I don't like the sound of that at all. I don't like the sound of this. So I'm actually gonna pick a whole other sample. Let's pick this. I think that will go well together. And then we're gonna make this step sample 10. And we're going to, let's see. We're gonna play it forward. Okay, that's sounding a lot better. And again, this is an example of using the parameter locking. And that's, again, holding the button and adjusting the settings. Using the parameter locking to adjust the sample source. And you can see this is the default setting for this track. But if you hold that individual step, which is the downbeat of phrase 3, you can see the adjustments that have been made. So I want to make a few more adjustments too. I want to go to the filter and I want to change it to the parametric EQ. And I want to highlight some high mids. And I also want to turn up the overdrive a little bit. Really want to max out the reverb and delay. Cool, so we got this kind of minimal thing going on with these chords. And a lot of scattery percussion going on in the background. And we still have 2 free sample spots that we can do pretty much whatever we want with. I would say add more melody in, perhaps a pad. So let's go to 3 and let's find us a new sample. Let's see. Again, I'm just trying to use stock sounds for these purposes. Okay, so I found this sample that is nice and long. And I'm going to put it on sort of a 4 on the floor rhythm. And we have each of our pages filled. But I'm going to turn the tune up. And if you want to go to steady intervals, you can hold the function and turn the knob, and it'll go to, octave intervals. I want to turn the reverb up, pan it, add a little bit of delay. And I also want to use the LFO to have this sound duck at the downbeat. So I put, I used a 4 on the floor rhythm, but it sounds a bit, robotic. So we're going to take the destination of the LFO and go to sample level, hit yes. We're going to change the mode to the trig. So that means the cycle will start over, the looping envelope will start over with each trig that is placed. And then we're going to change the depth. And I'm actually going to remove these notes now that I kind of use them as a basis to get the sound down. And I'm going to play in something chromatically. But first I'm going to filter the sound a little bit. Put a low pass on that. All right. So I've turned our metronome on, and we're actually going to go into the metronome page and turn on the pre-roll bars. So basically it'll just give us 4 beats before we start recording. There we go. And again, you can hear that that's not quantized because that first beat was off the grid. Now we're back. I'm going to adjust some of these elements because this is sounding a little too harsh. That stab on the right side from track 8. Another fun thing to do is to adjust that LFO, the wave shape. You can play around with that. I think that sine wave sounds the best. So yeah, you can really kind of hear how this has come together from our initial beat. And again, this is all with stock samples. Another nifty trick, let's save, that I want to show you is how you can control all of the parameters at once for all of the tracks. So let us use the bit crusher as an example. Basically, to do this, you hold the track button and you adjust any parameter and it changes it for all of the samples you have going on. So I'll show you. So this sounds pretty cool in its own right, admittedly. But what if we decide we want to go back to our initial pattern? Well, to do that, you hold function and hit reload pattern. There you go. So you can save the current pattern by holding function and hitting yes. Save pattern is that alternate function. But by default, it will save whatever the default state of that pattern is that you have. So you can play around and then go back. And you can save different patterns to that spot if you want to like change to something crazy. You have the project saved. So you can really get creative with that implementation and do some cool performance tricks. It is easy to accidentally overwrite what you've got going on if you go a centimeter too high. It's happened to me before, which is a bad time. But with practice, and kind of just staying focused, you can avoid that happening. Anyways, it can be super fun to play around with. But yeah, those are the basic foundations of how to sort of get a pattern or a beat started on the Digitakt using those stock samples. You can really have a lot of fun with it. And I know it can be super exciting and enticing to record a bunch of samples or buy sample packs, but I implore you to kind of explore what you can do with just the stock samples on the Digitakt. You can make a lot of interesting stuff here. Anyways, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. If you learned something, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I have a lot more intermediate and advanced Digitakt tutorials as well, so hopefully you'll find something useful there. Anyways, thanks for joining, and take care.